As a geologist, I believe that civilizations around the world are driven by the rocks beneath our feet. In this series, I'll be travelling around the Pacific Rim to visit some of the most volatile places on Earth and discover how rocks are fundamental to human existence. I'm visiting the perilous volcanic landscapes of Indonesia. The geological booby traps of California. And the hostile peaks of the Andes. In this programme, I will experience the breathtaking beauty of Japan, where a nation's culture has been inescapably defined by a geological curse. Japan is one of the most dramatic and beautiful places on Earth. But here, the geological forces that created this awesome landscape have also dealt the Japanese a harsh hand. The problem is, this kind of rugged landscape covers 3/4 of the country. And it has forced the population onto a few small coastal plains, which have become some of the most overcrowded places on the planet. I'm fascinated by the impact geology can have on people's lives. And I'm going to discover what the consequences are for the 127 million people living here. I'll be finding out how this mountainous topography has shaped spirituality. And everything from living space... I can nearly touch both sides.
The fourth one is like...
to etiquette...
I don't think I can do that.
And entertainment. And by the end, I hope to have discovered a secret of how Japan has overcome its geological curse. In Japan, 3/4 of the country's population is crowded into massive urban areas, sprawling endlessly across its coastal plains. Packed in cheek by jowl, these people are living in one of the most densely populated places on Earth. You don't have to look far to find signs of a country where space is scarce. When it comes to building houses, every square inch is at a premium. Average living space in Japan is nearly 2.5 times smaller than in the United States. At the core of the Tokyo Central Business District, this much space, a square yard, costs over $1.25 million. If the urban plains are so claustrophobic and expensive, why don't the Japanese spread into the mountains like people do in many other parts of the world? This is a mystery I would like to solve, and I want to know if it's all down to the geology. Japan is an archipelago, a chain of islands extending along the eastern coast of Asia in the Pacific. The country is dominated by 4 main islands. The far north is on the same latitude as Montreal, and it stretches to Kyushu, which is as far south as Miami. According to legend, these Japanese islands were created by gods, who dipped a jeweled spear into a muddy sea and formed solid earth from its droplets. As a geologist, my view is no less poetic or dramatic. The Earth is like a cracked boiled egg. Its surface is made up of a series of plates called tectonic plates. There's a huge one that covers the Pacific, and around its edges, around the Pacific Rim, are incredibly violent forces. A zone of catastrophic earthquakes and volcanoes, known as the Ring of Fire, is created as the Pacific Plate literally floats around on the Earth's viscous interior, moving against the surrounding plates. With this tofu, I'm going to show you how Japan came to be in the danger zone, situated at the scene of massive collision. On the one side, two ocean plates, the Philippines and the Pacific, which are moving westward at about 3 inches a year towards the continental plate of Asia on the other side. Because the ocean plates are denser, heavier, they push down underneath the continental one. As they sunk deeper beneath it, they pushed the continental plate up into a ridge. This ridge forms the basis of the Japanese archipelago. The stereotypical picture of Japan's landscape isn't wide of the mark. Sheer rock faces with vegetation clinging on for dear life. In fact, 73% of Japan is made up of towering peaks. There are signs all over the place that there's a difficult place to live. There's steep winding roads, there's hanging villages, and there's landslides. Here in the mountains, farming isn't easy. The soils are mostly bad. They're thin, stony, unstable, and heavy rains leach them of nutrients. But how has geology made these mountains so particularly hostile? I'm heading to central Honshu, to what are known as the Japanese Alps, in search of clues. The Alps, both here and in Europe, are relatively young in geological terms, and that's why they're still sharp and steep. Just like the European Alps, these mountains have been made even more rugged thanks to the work of nature's giant chisels, glaciers. Glaciers are made up of fallen snow that over many years compresses into huge, thickened ice masses. Over time, the sheer weight of ice bears down on the rock below, cutting away at the landscape and scouring the mountains as it moves downhill. There aren't any of these great rivers of ice left in Japan today, but 18,000 years ago there were plenty, and they left their calling cards. A telltale sign that this landscape has been carved by glaciers is the presence of these U-shaped valleys with their steep sides and their flat bottoms. These were once V-shaped river valleys, but glaciers follow lines of least resistance, stealing the river valleys for themselves and scouring them into U-shapes. All that glacial sculpting makes for beautiful scenery. But this isn't the place for towns and villages. These steaming craters are also part of Japan's geological curse. Different forces of nature are at work here. But the problem is that they're even less sympathetic to urban settlement. To show you what I mean, I'm heading to Kyushu Island, nearly 700 miles to the south. This is Mount Aso, which lies almost in the centre of Kyushu. It's pretty much continually active. Often it's too dangerous to come here, certainly not without special equipment. The reason it's so dangerous is that down there, sulfur dioxide and other toxic gases are bubbling off the molten magma. That's the molten rock, far beneath the surface. If that magma gets to the surface, it goes bang. When it goes bang, you hide in those shelters. Mount Aso sits in the middle of one of the world's largest calderas. That's a feature created when a volcano collapses in on itself. This one is over 60 miles in circumference. You can see the edge way over there. This place feels completely different from the alpine landscape I've visited before. It's as if I'm the only life form in a barren and forbidding wasteland. Just like the ridge I visited earlier, Mount Aso owes its existence to those oceanic plates going down underneath the continental plate. As you slide deeper down underneath it, fluids leave it, pass upwards, and reduce the melting temperature of the overlying rocks. These melt to form magma, which forces its way up through cracks and fissures to the top. And when they get to the surface, it forms a volcano. This process of volcanic eruption and land building is still very much alive today. In fact, about 60 of Japan's 186 volcanoes are still active. Japan has had more than its fair share of volcanic disaster. Just over 90 miles from Mount Aso is Mount Sakurajima. Here, all that magma pushing up and bursting through the fissures in the rocks makes for a very perilous environment. In 1779, over 140 people died during a huge eruption here. Like the victims of Pompeii, most of those perished due to a terrifying series of explosions known as pyroclastic flows. These happen at ground level and are violent blasts of hot gases and deadly material like volcanic fragments such as pumice and glass shards. They move at high speed, 50 to 100 miles an hour. If you see one coming, it's too late. At times during the last century, there have been up to 200 eruptions a year, earning it a place as one of the world's most active volcanoes. 500,000 people live in the shadow of the mountain, in Kagoshima. Originally a fishing port, the city is squeezed along the shoreline. In the foothills of Sakurajima, I meet Toru Manami, who has lived here all his life. He teaches local people about natural history and the legends of the mountain. So this is it, it's a Sakurajima?
That's right, that's right.
So what's it like when this thing actually blows off?
Well, today it's very quiet. Like about 4 or 5 years ago, that we had 4 or 5 times in a week. You see that lightning on top, and then huge, they're like mushroom-looking smoke.
You got a big mushroom cloud that goes way, way up?
Oh, way, way up. Imagine like the atomic bomb explodes, huge in scale. But right after that, the thing that you don't like, ash falls. And then entire city is covered with ash.
Some years, over 30 million tons of ash are discharged, consisting of minute particles which can lodge deep in the lungs. Unsurprisingly, the people of Kagoshima have to be ready for an eruption at any moment. These pupils, running for their lives, are from the Ohu Elementary School. Protected by their hard hats, they dash for cover. Today it's only a drill,
but they never know when it'll be for real.
Is it really necessary, all of
It is necessary. They have to get used to it. If they don't know how to manage themselves like that, then in case of that volcano erupts, they cannot control themselves. It's a part of their lives.
The people around here do all they can to control the power of the volcano. On Sakurajima, even rainfall can be deadly. Following downpours, the water mixes with the ash and rock. This creates huge rivers of debris. We geologists call them lahars. They sweep downhill, travelling at over 50 miles an hour.
I'm standing in the middle of one of these rocky rivers. A network of massive canals has been built all over the volcano, costing $3 billion. They divert the flows of muddy debris away from the people and straight down the mountain. The biggest flows are 1,800 cubic feet per second. That's equivalent to 12 buses rushing by every second. And last year, these canals were used 17 times. You're obviously not supposed to be here. I've been told to be very careful and keep my ears and eyes open because you can't outrun one of those monsters.
The next day, heavy rain brought a huge lahar down this very channel. Japan is a land of great challenges. A place whose rocky surface has been violently shaped by the huge forces beneath our feet. This geology has tempered the Japanese people and given them a steely resilience.
In rebuilding their defeated nation from the decimation of war, the inhabitants of this magnificent archipelago had to dig deep into the reserves of ingenuity and understanding of the world around them. It's little wonder that their success story was called a miracle.
And the miracle means Japanese industrial might reaches across the world. A potent influence in most developed economies. Now the tectonic forces, which pose an ever-present menace here, affect us all.
Another major earthquake in Tokyo would be devastating for the country's economy. If it happens, Japan won't be the only nation in the firing line. So many countries have a stake in the financial markets here that the effects of such a disaster would reverberate around the world.